Okay, sorry about this. I knew what I was looking for, but I couldn't find it earlier. So, in order to do your web, what you want to do is draw a path and use within After Effects what's referred to as trim paths. So, I'm just going to do kind of a quick, easy path here. I'll just draw this out. And then go into that shape layer, and turn off the fill, and let's give this, so we can see it, a nice kind of a thick stroke. Just stretch that a little bit. All right. So there's our webby kind of shape. So under contents in your animation timeline, so here's our web shape that we just created. Contents, there's a option over here that says add, with a little arrow. And if you click on that and go down, trim paths sit right there. And it'll add a new item to your object. And to animate these, it really is as simple as the start point. 0 is the first point that you put down on the screen, and the end point is the last point you put down on the screen. So it starts at 0 and it ends at 100. So all we really need to do is take the end point, and I'm just going to roll it back to 0, set a keyframe for that, and then move ahead a second or however far you need to go and scale that up to 100. And so the process of making that path is pretty much as simple as that. You'll do one that's a little more, complicated, obviously. And I mentioned earlier that you probably want to make that web one entire path. And as I think about it, that's probably not really true. Take a look at how webs are created. I'm sure you can find a video somewhere that already has an animation of some sort that will show how a spider builds out a web. But take a look at it that way. You might actually be able to create this in parts. The strands that connect the center to the outside points all individually, and then each ring, as it were, of webbing working your way in. You can probably do all of those as separate parts. It probably doesn't have to all be one, but so make sure you take a look at that and you've done that research. So that's stretching that out. So the other thing you had mentioned that you wanted to do, and I'm just going to drag this down here, come up here, is to sort of have your spider drop off the top of the frame and then maybe swing back and forth. So I'm going to use the same technique that I used whenever I did the demo on character rigging, and just draw. I'm going to use the pen tool. Where'd it go? There it is. And I'm going to start my first point up here out of the screen and then come down here. And if I hold down the shift key, it should constrain my path to be perfectly up and down. And so I'm just going to draw that line segment. And I want to use the convert points to nulls effect that I used on the character rigging. And the way I do that is I will, I need to do that again. I make sure that you don't have to keep these separate, but it helps. So that's just going to confuse things. So all right, so I'm going to do this shape again here real fast. So there's our segment that's going to drop down. And then within that, I'm just going to open contents, open shape, open path, select path, and then go to the window menu, and at the very bottom, there's create nulls from path. And that's going to bring up a very simple dialog like this. And you want points to follow nulls. So the points on your path are going to follow the nulls that it creates. So we'll just do that. And you'll see that it adds those two nulls. Just close that out because we don't need it anymore. And now, with your selection tool, you can select this bottom null and move it back and forth. And you can just animate its position like you do anything else. What's also kind of nice about this is you wanted to have your spider attached to it. So if I go in here and create a quick down and dirty round spider, I'm going to actually make sure that I center the anchor point into that shape. Go back to my selection tool, and I'm just going to drag this over right to the end of this, and then I'm going to parent this to the null that's at the end of that line. And what that'll do is, anytime I move that null, not only will the line swing, but that spider, that dot, is going to follow it. So I'll go up here in my timeline here to parents and link. And if you can either select the null that you want there, or you can just use this called a pick whip. Grab that and drag that down here over top of that null that you want to link it to. And now, whenever we select that null, it'll swing back, and we can swing it back and forth. So within context of your animation, I'll just, with this null, it's really just the position of this null that we're going to be changing. Tap P on my keyboard, and I'm just going to hold down my shift key and drag this up out of the frame. Set a keyframe for it. Come across 2 seconds. Grab it. I'm just going to drag it down like he's dropping out. See? And then, and I'm just doing these at 1 second increments, but you'll want to probably time these better to what you want to do. So I just sort of swung him back and forth there a couple of times. So one of the things to point out here is that he's just going, let's see, I'm going to actually copy those and do that again so he swings back. And then have him come back to the middle. So he doesn't, it's not a very nice arc, really. You can put more key points in there if you want, keyframes in there if you want, or what you can do is select, so I'm going to come over here to this point. If you select that point, right click on it and go down to keyframe interpolation. Set, right now these are set to linear. That's why they go straight across. So you can actually set these to Bezier. I usually do them both. But you see it adds the little handles to it. So now I can do that. And I just kind of need to scrub through my timeline here a little bit to, let's see if I come across that keyframe right there is the next one that I want to move. So let's select that one. right click, keyframe interpolation, Bezier. Well, might be actually better to draw this path out as well, to have that follow like we have done before with other stuff. The trick is getting in there and accessing it. Let's try that again. Bezier and Bezier. So maybe a better way. Sometimes it works out this way. Just the way that the initial way that we decide to do something ends up not being the best way to go about it. Sometimes there's always different ways to do stuff. So this time I think I maybe should have done this a different way. But anyway, we kind of get this sort of thing happening. So you might want to look at handling the back and forth a little bit differently. If between now and Friday you have trouble with the swinging part, send me a note. But that'll at least get you going on the right path.